The packed auditorium buzzed with anticipation as bright lights poured over the stage, but no one could predict the explosion that was about to unfold. When Vice President Kamala Harris stepped up to the microphone, her face carried an anger no one had seen before, and within moments, it became clear she was on the verge of a complete meltdown on live television in front of thousands. What was supposed to be a polished display of Democratic unity at the annual leadership conference quickly unraveled into a battlefield of ego, power, and generational clash. For months, Harris had been under unrelenting scrutiny, approval ratings slipping, criticism piling up, and her own frustrations mounting like steam inside a pressure cooker. Now it was all boiling over. Just 20 feet away, freshman Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett stood calm and steady, unaware that her poised response to Harris's outburst would silence the vice president, electrify the audience, and go viral within hours, reshaping both women's political destinies. The irony of the setting made the scene even more surreal. This was supposed to be a friendly, collaborative event, with party leaders, donors, and media heavyweights gathered to present a united front for the Democrats' future. Instead, it became the stage for one of the most embarrassing public displays in modern American politics. As Harris's voice rose, "You think you know better than me? You're nothing but a freshman who doesn't understand how this game works." The auditorium went still, every camera and phone capturing history in the making. What few in the audience realized was that this eruption had been building for months. Harris had made private, cutting remarks about Crockett, dismissing her as too ambitious, too inexperienced, a young upstart who didn't know her place. Crockett, by contrast, had remained professional, refusing to retaliate and focusing on her work. She represented a rising generation, focused on policy, grounded in data, and willing to fight for progressive values voters increasingly demanded, while Harris clung to the old guard, a politics of hierarchy and control. Behind the scenes, the tension was already well known. Harris had pushed a controversial strategy of moderating progressive stances to attract swing voters, while Crockett countered with polling and research showing people wanted Democrats to lean into progressive promises, not back away. Harris dismissed her repeatedly, not only rejecting the data but framing Crockett as arrogant, ungrateful, and dangerously naive. As Crockett's national profile grew, praised by the media as a voice of the future, Harris's resentment deepened. By the time the two women were set to share the same stage, the vice president's aides were quietly anxious, some even suggesting she avoid the event altogether. Harris refused, confident she could reassert her dominance. Instead, it backfired spectacularly. The auditorium, filled with over 2,000 activists, donors, and party leaders, turned into a theater of raw political drama. As Harris's voice cracked with fury, her words strayed from strategy into personal attacks. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Donors shifted uneasily, journalists leaned forward, and phones lit up to record. Then Harris broke the fourth wall entirely, glaring straight at Crockett. "Some people need to remember that respect is earned, not given, and some people haven't earned anything yet." Gasps filled the air. Crockett, calm and deliberate, rose from her seat and began walking toward the microphone. Harris's composure collapsed further, her voice shaking, her body trembling, as she tried to stop her rival. Don't you dare think you could just walk up here." But Crockett kept walking, adjusted the microphone, and stood tall. The entire room froze, cameras locked in, and Harris, once the epitome of control, stood visibly unraveling before the nation. In that moment, everyone understood they were witnessing a defining clash. One woman's career unraveling in real time, while another's was being born. The contrast between the two women could not have been sharper. Harris, usually composed and commanding, looked increasingly unhinged, her hair slightly out of place from her frantic gestures, her voice rising to a shrill pitch that grated against the silence of the hall. Every exaggerated movement, every wild wave of her arms, made it clear that she was losing control in real time. In stark opposition, Jasmine Crockett remained an island of calm. She sat upright, posture firm, expression measured, hands still. She didn't fidget, didn't glance nervously at the crowd, and didn't even attempt to interrupt. She simply waited, her composure so striking that it cast Harris's behavior in an even harsher light. Later, audience members would describe the tension as electric, the kind of heavy stillness that descends before a thunderstorm. The air seemed thick, and every person in the room could feel they were witnessing something extraordinary and disastrous. Then Harris's voice pierced the silence. "You want to say something?" she shouted, not even needing the microphone. "You think you have something important to add? Well, let me tell you something about importance." Gasps and stunned murmurs rippled across the crowd. Reporters' fingers flew across keyboards. Audience members covered their mouths. And countless phones tilted upward to capture the Vice President of the United States tearing into a fellow Democrat in public. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't politics. It was raw, unfiltered rage, caught on camera for the world to see. Harris's voice grew sharper, her words harsher. "You think you know better than me? You're nothing. You're a nobody who got lucky and won an election. You don't know anything about real leadership." The crowd audibly gasped again, some even rising to their feet in disbelief. What had started as a conference about unity had turned into political self-destruction. Finally, after what felt like minutes of screaming, Harris paused just long enough to take a breath. Crockett rose and walked the microphone with the same calm, deliberate movements that had defined her demeanor all evening. She adjusted the mic, looked directly at Harris, and spoke softly but firmly. "Madam Vice President, I think you might want to sit down and take a breath." The simplicity of the statement was devastating. The crowd reacted instantly with gasps and hushed exclamations, stunned by how such a calm, almost maternal response could make Harris look so unhinged by comparison. Harris snapped back, her voice even louder. "Don't tell me to sit down. I don't take orders from you. You work for me. This whole party works for me." That was a breaking point. Crockett leaned in toward the microphone, her voice still perfectly steady, and delivered a line that would instantly become political legend. "Madam Vice President, with all due respect, nobody works for you. We all work for the American people. And right now, the American people are watching you have a breakdown on national television because you can't handle the fact that someone disagrees with you." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. It wasn't applause or boos. It was something deeper, the shared recognition that history had just been made. Harris stood red-faced, screaming incoherently, pointing and waving her hands as if trying to claw back control, while Crockett stood motionless, the only adult in the room. Reporters scrambled to capture every word. Camera operators zoomed in on Harris's contorted expression and Crockett's serene confidence, and audience members looked at one another in disbelief. Some shook their heads, others covered their mouths, and a few even rose to leave, unable to stomach the humiliation playing out before them. Harris tried again to respond, but her words tumbled out in fragments. "You don't, you can't, this is not. I am the Vice President," each phrase sounding more desperate than the last. The composure that had once defined her career was gone, replaced by incoherence. In contrast, Crockett's calm tone and measured words underscored the generational shift unfolding before their eyes. One woman's career was unraveling on stage, while the other's was being defined in real time. What began as a tense exchange quickly spiraled into a disaster for Harris. She seemed to realize she was losing control, yet instead of regaining composure, she doubled down on the behavior that was eroding her credibility. The audience's discomfort was obvious. Some cringed, a few covered their eyes, and the secondhand embarrassment spread across the auditorium. Her repeated insistence of, "I am the Vice President," only made matters worse, as though her title alone could outweigh her behavior. By contrast, Crockett remained steady, delivering pointed remarks with respect and composure. In just minutes, she projected more presidential qualities than Harris had shown throughout the entire confrontation. When Crockett calmly stated, "Yes, you are. And that's exactly why this behavior is so concerning. The American people deserve better than this." The room fell silent except for the sound of phones recording. Everyone present understood they were witnessing a career-defining moment, but not in the way Harris had hoped. Harris lashed out again, accusing Crockett of trying to embarrass her. Crockett's response cut sharply without raising her voice. "Madam Vice President, I'm not embarrassing you. You're embarrassing yourself, our party, and our country." She turned to leave, but Harris shouted one last desperate defense about the burdens of leadership. Crockett stopped, delivered what would become the most quoted line of the night. "Real leadership isn't about the weight you carry. It's about how you carry that weight. and walked calmly back to her seat. Harris stood alone, pale and visibly shaking with anger, as the audience sat in stunned silence. A freshman representative had just outclassed the vice president without a single display of disrespect. The moderator quickly called a recess, but the damage was already done. What followed was explosive. The moment spread online almost instantly. Within minutes, clips of Crockett's composed responses and Harris's outbursts were flooding social media. Hashtags trended within the hour, and the contrast between the two women became meme material. One viral video showed Harris shouting while Crockett remained calm, racking up millions of views within hours. Audio clips mocking Harris's strained voice compared with Crockett's steady tone went viral. Crockett's line about working for the American people, not Harris, was shared over 100,000 times in 2 hours, praised as a model of leadership. Meanwhile, Harris's screaming of, "You're nothing, you're a nobody," was circulated with widespread shock and disappointment. The backlash deepened as compilations appeared online, Harris's face reddening in real time, lip readers claiming she muttered additional insults, and side-by-sides comparing her to a toddler throwing a tantrum. Another devastating clip contrasted her meltdown with past footage where she had criticized others for losing their temper, exposing hypocrisy that spread like wildfire. The internet's verdict was brutal. Harris looked unhinged, unprofessional, and unstable, while Crockett came across calm, dignified, and presidential. Within 6 hours, mainstream news networks led with the story. Headlines read, "Vice President melts down at Democratic conference," and "Harris screams at fellow Democrat in shocking outburst." In contrast, Crockett was hailed as a rising star who had shown grace under pressure. Political analysts immediately labeled it a career-defining moment. For Harris, potentially career-ending. For Crockett, her arrival on the national stage, the fallout was swift. Within 24 hours, major Democratic donors publicly questioned Harris's fitness for office. Senators voiced concern, and even members of her own staff privately admitted their embarrassment. Meanwhile, Crockett's campaign donations surged by 400%. She gained over 200,000 new social media followers, and senior party leaders began urging her to take on larger roles. Over the following weeks, the long-term impact became clear. Harris's approval ratings plunged 15 points. Her ability to handle pressure was widely doubted, and every angle of the confrontation, captured on professional cameras, cell phones, and security footage, told the same story. The Vice President of the United States had lost control, while a freshman representative showed the composure and leadership many had been waiting to see. The confrontation between Vice President Harris and freshman Representative Crockett quickly grew into something far larger than a single heated exchange. What began as a tense moment revealed stark differences not only between the two women, but also within the Democratic Party itself. Harris's loss of composure left older, more established Democrats scrambling to defend her behavior, often resorting to claims that it was a simple misunderstanding or that both women had been equally passionate in their convictions. Yet, these efforts at damage control only fueled the controversy further, especially as the video evidence made clear what had actually happened. In sharp contrast, Crockett's composure and calm leadership during the ordeal set her apart, capturing the admiration of younger Democrats and a growing segment of the public. Almost overnight, she transformed from a relatively unknown freshman lawmaker into one of the most respected voices in the party. She was soon invited to speak at major Democratic events across the country, with party leaders who had once overlooked her now seeking her input on significant policy decisions. The incident sparked a broader national conversation about leadership, temperament, and the qualities that truly matter in American politics. Voters weary of political drama and personal attacks found in Crockett a refreshing example of level-headedness and respect, even under extreme provocation. Many observers noted that she managed to project a sense of stability and dignity that felt presidential, while the sitting vice president appeared unpresidential in comparison. Political science professors and communication experts began studying the encounter as a textbook case in crisis communication. Universities incorporated the footage into their curricula to show how body language, tone, and word choice could shape public perception. Analyses poured in from political psychologists and body language specialists alike, most of whom agreed that Crockett's steady posture, calm demeanor, and respectful tone gave her a commanding presence. Meanwhile, Harris's erratic movements, raised voice, and defensive reactions projected insecurity and chaos. For many, the moment revealed troubling aspects of Harris's character that had gone unnoticed before. Her inability to handle disagreement, her tendency to personalize disputes, and her expectation of deference based solely on her position raised new questions about her fitness for a higher office. Analysts suggested the incident exposed the real Kamala Harris, someone who struggled to separate personal ego from public service. Crockett, on the other hand, embodied the opposite by showing respect for the office even while its occupant was disrespectful, focusing on serving the American people rather than protecting herself, and maintaining composure under fire. She showcased the exact traits voters say they want in a leader. 3 months later, when Crockett was asked about the incident, she responded with her characteristic grace. I have a lot of respect for the vice president and the office she holds. Everyone has bad days, and I hope we can all learn from that moment and move forward in a way that better serves the American people. Harris, in contrast, never fully recovered, though she issued a brief statement the day after. Expressing regret for her tone, she stopped short of directly apologizing to Crockett or acknowledging the inappropriateness of her behavior. This lack of accountability only deepened the contrast between the two women and further tarnished Harris's reputation. The episode also widened the generational divide within the Democratic Party. Younger Democrats saw Crockett as a model of the kind of new leadership they wanted: principled, respectful, and focused on the people rather than personal power. Older Democrats, tied to defending the vice president, appeared increasingly out of touch. In the end, the moment was not just about two women clashing in the spotlight. It became a turning point in how Democrats and many Americans redefine what true leadership should look like. The clash between Crockett and Harris quickly evolved from a heated exchange into a defining moment in modern American politics. What began as a routine political event became a case study in leadership under pressure. Crockett's composed and dignified response was praised as a model of grace in crisis management, while Harris's emotional reaction was widely criticized as an example of how not to handle disagreement. Older Democrats struggled to defend her, and political consultants dissected the incident for its broader implications. The message to voters was clear. Americans wanted leaders who stayed calm, focused on issues, and resisted personal drama in the months that followed. The contrast between the two women's trajectories could not have been sharper. Crockett's approval rating surged, vaulting her from relative obscurity to being discussed as a potential presidential contender. Major Democratic donors began approaching her, and betting markets speculated on her political rise. Harris, meanwhile, faced growing doubts about her judgment and stability. Party insiders distanced themselves. Whispers spread about her place on the next ticket, and her once bright future appeared clouded with uncertainty. Every time the two women appeared at subsequent political events, the comparison was unavoidable. Crockett continued to impress with thoughtful, steady answers, while Harris was haunted by that moment of lost composure. The incident reshaped both their careers. One politician gained nationwide respect and admiration, while the other struggled to rebuild credibility. More than anything, the episode revealed an important truth about politics today. Authenticity and composure resonate more deeply than theatrics or titles. Voters could see who was truly committed to serving the public good and who faltered under pressure. Crockett's strength wasn't in volume or rank, but in her principles and her calm. Harris's failure, conversely, served as a warning about what happens when leaders let emotions overshadow judgment. The story has since become a symbol of what leadership should and should not look like. It proved that character is revealed not in moments of triumph, but in moments of trial. For Crockett, that moment opened the door to a promising future. For Harris, it cast a long shadow that may define the rest of her political career.